Today, I'm speaking with one of the top chiropractors in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, more specifically Richboro, Pennsylvania, someone who has been selected by the National Professional Referral Network as a verified expert. After reviewing hundreds of professionals in the Bucks County area, Dr. Andrew DeSaro stood out for a very specific reason, and we're going to get into that today because most people think they know how to choose a chiropractor. And generally speaking, most people are choosing a chiropractor for the wrong reason. So we're going to break all of that down and we're going to ask Dr. Andrew DeSaro some questions about how he helps people, families get and stay healthy, eliminate the cause of their pain, and lead a wellness-based lifestyle, and what also separates him from everyone else in the Bucks County, Pennsylvania area. So Andrew, thanks for joining me today.
Dr. Len, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. You know, a lot of people, I'm sure you would agree, in Bucks County, Richboro, et cetera, are looking for ways to become pain-free. How do I get rid of the pain? And or how do I get healthy? And so once they reach that point and they start looking for solutions, complex or simple, my question for you, first question is, what are the biggest challenges you see with patients today?
Yeah, Dr. Len, that's a really great question to start with. Yeah, it is a big challenge for people. And here's the simplified version. Most people that come in with either some sort of a disc issue, whether it be a herniated disc or a bulging disc, or even something like a brachial neuritis in their neck or something, one of the hardest things is that we're all believed to think that, anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxers, painkillers, injections, those are things that are going to, solve the problem. And what it ends up doing is it ends up just masking the issue and not really getting to the root cause. And so what ends up happening they don't understand that it's interfering with the dysfunction of the body. And just put it, I'll kind of frame it this way, is that the brain controls everything in the body. It sends signals to every single organ, muscle, gland, cell of the body. And so once we have that basic understanding that the brain controls everything and the brain sends messages out down through the spine, and those spinal nerves, right, are the ones that are being protected by the spinal column, the vertebra. My job is to identify where those problems are, but people don't even know that in the beginning. So having an option and having chiropractic as an opportunity for them to resolve their issue, is a big challenge because they just don't know.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think what we're really talking about here is masking or covering up potentially versus correcting the cause. And again, we'll dive into more of that a little bit later. Can you give me an idea of who do you work with? What are the ages? Is it men, women, both, children, families? And who benefits the most by working with you?
That's another really insightful question. I work with different groups of people, but mostly I work with adults and teenagers. Adults are the ones that usually come in with some sort of, again, I mentioned a disc bulging or a herniated disc of some sort of problem, maybe even headaches or some type of vertigo, and they just don't know where it's coming from or why it started. And so that's one group of people I work with. Another group of people I work with are teenagers that are, under a lot of stress, whether it be from school or academics, and sometimes even just sports.
Hmm.
So they're getting a lot of these problems that they're encountering. And so what I end up finding when they show up to the office is, and who really benefits the most are the people that are looking for optimal function out of their bodies. Like they really want to get to it. They don't want to just take another pill or get another procedure done or something of the sort because they're frustrated that those things aren't solving the problem. And so what I'm able to do is offer them a process to go through to really kind of uncover that really root cause. And once we identify the root cause and correct it, it's off to the races. And so most people really find that when they're really working or when they start working with me, it's really very simple. Get to the root cause, work on it, maintain it, and yeah, they get great performance out of it.
Yeah, I think what you're really talking about is that paradigm shift that's taking place within society where people are starting to look for how do I correct the cause of fill in the blank rather than just, cover it up. So that makes perfect sense. You know, I'd like to know a little bit more about what makes you a little bit different than, say, a lot of the other chiropractors out there. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. I'm proud to say that over the past 28 years of experience in clinic, training, specialized education regarding spinal biomechanics. I've really kind of developed my own protocol, my own process, if you will, on how to get to the root cause, figure out exactly what specific vertebra or disc or both that I have to work with, how to correct it, and do it in such a manner that one is very gentle and very effective, but is really going to give the person the best benefit of how to move forward with what they're doing. And they're able to get back to playing with the kids, or doing their going to play golf, or doing the favorite thing that they love to do on the weekend, and
Mhm.
not just being encumbered by, well, I can't go up and down the steps, or I'm having trouble moving in and out of the car. So it really gives them an opportunity to say, hey, look, I got to the problem. I'm not just masking it with either drugs or medication. There's a million examples, but this is a really simple process, and my process actually, and not to kind of boast, but I've actually been hired and invited to go to lectures and programs to teach what I do to other chiropractors so that they can then help the people in their communities.
Great. So you mentioned your process. Can you give us an idea of what it's like for a new patient to come into your office? What does that process look like when they begin working with you?
Yeah, sure. It's very simple. What I have is a very simple three-step process. It begins with, though, doing an orthopedic and neurological evaluation, a consultation with the person that really understand their history, so I can really get all the nitty-gritty information that I'm going to need to go into detail with. And then what I do is I go through basically testing the spine to determine which specific parts of the spine or areas are most dysfunctional. And sometimes that dysfunction shows up as a pain or a tingling down the arm or burning or some sort of feeling. But what I'm able to do is ask the spine these questions through tests and find out which vertebra or which problem or which area, I'm sorry, has the problem. And then once I identify that, I'm able to now correct it. And once I'm working on the correction side of things, again, it's very gentle, it's very individualized. Some people enjoy a certain type of adjustment different than others. I made it a point to make sure over the past 28 years to learn numerous ways to take care of the same problem so that
Hmm.
I can basically match what the person needs when they show up. And of course, again, I know a lot of people say that they get results, but really, when people come in, they're comfortable right away, and they enjoy the process. But it's also still very clinical in the sense of, we're really addressing a problem here.
Yeah, makes sense. Can you give us an example, a patient story where, and it could be chronic or acute, but if a patient walks in, maybe having had a problem, you can tell me the problem for X amount of time, and maybe they've tried everything. I'm going to leave it up to you, but can you give us an example of a patient story that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple of them. Recently, I just had a person come into the office. They've been taking 800 milligrams of aspirin and or, painkillers, but that didn't start the problem. They actually started 3, 4 years ago. They were taking anti-inflammatories, painkillers, muscle relaxers,
Mm.
been to PT a couple different rounds of it, but never really got any better, and still continue to have this pain and this problem keep persist. And as a matter of fact, it actually got worse over the course of time. So masking it and making them believe it was healthy, and thinking that they can go ahead and still do things, really actually made the problem worse. And so the gentleman just came in the other day, and he has pain shooting down his leg all the way down from his lower back down to his ankle or near his foot. And he just can't even deal with it anymore. It's been such a problem, and it flares up from something pretty medium, right, not a big deal, but flares up when he's just trying to bend and put on his shoes to like a 12 out of 10 kind of thing. And so what I was able to do is walk him through that process I just described. I was able to analyze his spine and ask his spine these questions to figure out where the problem was. And for him, it happened to be at the lower part of the spine, right above the sacrum, which is the base of the spine. And he had a disc issue, a herniated disc, and a dysfunctional vertebra there. And believe it or not, and I know that it sounds crazy, but it's only been a couple weeks that I've been working with him, and he's literally like 80%, 90% better, almost completely out of pain. I won't say completely, but almost out of pain. And He's now able to walk, he's able to move, he's able to exercise, stay active the way he wants to be. And yeah, it's just a great, phenomenal story that it's a great example of the kind of person that walks in the door and in a short while they're getting better.
And it's all about correcting the cause, the power of correcting the cause of the problem. Now, you talked about your unique process. You talked about your background a little bit. Maybe you can share a little bit more about who you were not for, like maybe who is not a candidate, and maybe if you want to talk a little bit more about what qualifies you, if anything else, to work with the subset of patients that you described, the adults, the teenagers.
Yeah, sure. And that's another really good question to know, like what kind of people am I not really fit for? And that really becomes a big issue because a lot of people think, well, every chiropractor is created equal, and we think as chiropractors that I can, be a fit for everyone. And to
Hmm.
be honest with you, it's just not true. And so, really, to be honest with you, the people that most fit with me, right, are the ones who are looking for getting to that corrective cause, the ones that are tired of taking the medication, the ones that are done with taking the or going through the procedures, and really, having those sleepless nights and not feeling good, not being able to get good rest, not really having good health. Those are the people that want to get better are really the best ones for me, right? People that are motivated, people that
Yeah.
want to see correction. The ones that are okay with and are happy with just taking the medications and going on their way and masking
Hmm.
pain and pretending their bodies are healthy. Well, those probably people wouldn't be really fit for my office. And to kind of answer the second part of your question is what kind of makes it so unique for me. Again, I've had a, 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 an entire career of 28 years of really learning and actively learning. I don't just get the basic CEU classes, right? I'm going out there actively learning, looking for, how do I improve this? How do I make this better? And I've done that for 28 years. And now on this side of it, I'm invited to go now teach my protocol to other chiropractors so that they can help people in their communities and help their patients very much the same way that I'm able to do that. And so it really has become almost like a full circle career
Hmm.
where I'm able to, address that issue. And you mentioned one thing which I want to touch upon. It's wonderful is really the power of corrective cause, right? That is a magnificent way of people getting really the health that they deserve and that they're striving for. Is really getting at that, cause of the problem, getting to the root of it, and then correcting it properly.
Awesome. Do you think it's important for people in the Richboro or Bucks County area to stay local, to stay close to home, to work with a chiropractor close to home, or are there benefits from going further away? What's your opinion on that?
Another good question about whether or not should you go local or should you find somebody out of the area. For me and what I work with, the kind of people I work with, people in my area are very fortunate to have somebody like me that has had 28 years of experience doing this. There's not many chiropractors in my area that can say that. And even if there were some in the area that may have been around for a little while, they're certainly not the ones being asked to go teach their protocol, their technique
Hmm.
to other chiropractors. So what really affords the people in my area wonderful access is that they have access to somebody who has the clinical background, who has the ability to teach and reproduce what I'm doing over and over again. And they're really just a beautiful way of saying, hey, look, this I'm lucky. I have this right in my backyard. And why would I need to go any further? And so yeah, and if there are resources that I ever have to pull into, I have a broad swath of practitioners and colleagues that I can call upon. But I think the people in my community are fortunate to be able to have me so close.
Yeah, I agree. What would you say your patients say they appreciate most about you?
That's a good question. I had to, I had a recent experience where one of the people came into the office and she's a young woman and she was saying that she was going through a lot of stuff, dizziness and having these symptoms of vertigo and, couldn't understand it. And after just sitting with her, and then we were able to go through the orthopedic and neurological test and able to ask her spine and go through the testing that I've developed to see where the problem is. after we were done, and I gave her an adjustment she thought was absolutely just like, powerful, magical. She said to me, she goes, Dr. Andrew, you're one of the first doctors to actually listen to me and
Mm.
hear my part of the story and hear what was going on. So many of the other doctors out there just want to kind of jump to a solution that they think is going on, or they want to, prescribe a medication of some sort or whatever it is. And they forgot to actually, hear the story. And because I listened, we were able to decipher specifically where the problem was and be able to help her in such a manner that it was almost instantaneous that she was starting to feel, 95% better. So
Yeah,
I think that that's what people appreciate is the fact that I take the time and I work with them and work through with them the issues they're having.
I love that. I can tell you're passionate about what you do. What do you enjoy most about being able to get and keep people healthy and pain-free?
Well, you know what? It doesn't take me much to get fired up when you start talking, chiropractic and helping people. But here's the greatest thing, and this is where my heart goes, when I put hands on people and start helping them and talking to them and being with them in their space to hear their stories is I want to be of service to them, right? The greatest honor I can have is to serve them something so pure and something so wonderful as chiropractic and be able to give them not only the adjustment, but then the information behind that, right? Chiropractic has a long lineage of years and decades of really helping lots of people, helping the sick people get well. And not only helping sick people get well, now that we've found is that chiropractic is one of the best biohacking ways of helping well people stay well, which
Mhm.
is such a big issue in the world of longevity and keeping healthy through our years. So yeah, that's the part that I find the most satisfying is serving people and giving them health.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, for people in Richboro, Pennsylvania, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that are thinking about a chiropractor, what should they look for in hiring or choosing a chiropractor?
You know what? I think you're right. And when you use the word hiring, because you know what, you're hiring me to do a job, and whatever that job is. But to answer your question, the best thing people need to do is I think they need to meet and talk with the doctor first. It's great to have a wonderful referral. It's great to know people that, hey, recommend this person, that person, which I think is fantastic. It's a great starting point. But I think it's also important for them to talk with the doctor, see if the goals that you have as the person coming in are able to be suited by the doctor, right? There's some chiropractors that just don't do the same things that I do. And so it's an opportunity for you to interview the chiropractor. And in that process, if you find out that one, they have years of experience, good education as to what they're doing, and even so, that not only did they get good results with a person or two or something like that, but they're able to actually reproduce and replicate what they're doing over and over again. That to me is one of the best stories or information pieces that you can get from a chiropractor is, how reproducible are their results and what can they offer me as far as helping me reach my goals.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Andrew, thanks for joining me today. On behalf of the National Professional Referral Network, I want to encourage anybody who sees this that is searching for a verified expert chiropractor in the Bucks County area to reach out to Andrew. He's happy to answer any questions that you have. Dr. Andrew, I look forward to talking with you again in the future, and I will talk to you soon.
Dr. Len, thanks. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
My pleasure. Bye for now.